Well, we are back on our maiden voyage of the John and Brad show, the Brad and John show. I am Brad, and he is John Combest. And by the way, I promote you wherever I can.
Thank you, Brad.
What John does every morning, 365 days a year. In leap year, 366 days a year.
Yes.
And it's done since when? October of 2001? Was that what you said?
That's right. Yeah, just turned 22. The website just turned 22 years old.
So you've done this. You started right after 9/11 then, right?
I did. Yeah, it was that fall. Gosh, I was 23 years old at the time. I was a young man.
So John does,
and for folks who haven't seen it before, it's. Go ahead, Brad.
No, you dropped out a minute there. Well, go ahead and say you can get a better idea. You can tell the story better than I can.
Yeah, in the 90s, like so many people that followed news, I loved the Drudge Report, and I woke up every day reading the Drudge Report. And I wanted to build something like that for the state of Missouri. So I bought my own domain name and just began updating the site every morning in October of 2001. So if folks go to johncombest.com, by 7 a.m. every morning, you'll have every news article in the state of Missouri that focuses on state politics or our federal elected officials and from Missouri.
And what it is it's a very, and I don't mean this as a dig, I mean this as a compliment. It's a very bare bones looking website. No graphics,
Absolutely.
No video, no dancing kids or anything.
Babies or monkeys.
Dancing babies or monkeys. It's essentially a bunch of links. And you look at what you want to look at. You sort of peruse all the different topics and things like that, and then you click on one of the links, and it takes you to that particular website. And so we'll start doing this. What if I said to you the top 3 stories in the state of Missouri right now? What are they today?
Well, if you go to johncombest.com today, you'll see the top stories are there was a big pro-Israel rally in St. Charles yesterday.
Really?
So there's some local media coverage of that. Let's see. Also, there's quite an interesting letter to the editor in the Springfield paper where a gentleman who's pro-choice suggests that instead of adopting foster kids, who are, according to him, a net cost to society, folks should abort those babies instead, and that would be a bigger benefit to society. So that's the kind of thing it's up today.
So he's...
And then let's think. Also, it's the beginning of, or we're coming to the end of firearms deer hunting season. There's a unique story from the Washington Missourian about a woman whose dog was shot.
Really?
On the Friday before deer hunting season started. She has set up a GoFundMe, and she is pretty much laying the blame at Missouri hunters, even though hunting season hadn't opened yet. So the Department of Conservation is reminding people to actually take a close look at whatever you're shooting before you begin.
You know, the sad thing about that is that's the perfect example of your typical deer hunter is very conscientious, goes by the rules, plays by the, plays well with other people, safety, you take, I guess this is what's sort of frustrating to me is that people will, for example, people will criticize gun owners, and there's several politicians who've talked about the fact that if you shoot a deer with an AR-15, that deer's going to explode.
Right.
And it's like, you have no idea what you're talking about.
Which is untrue.
Yeah.
And Brad, you've talked about this before, but it's also the same type of folks that criticize America's farmers for, pollution and for anything negative with the environment. They blame cattle farmers,
right?
Or they blame farmers and farmers are the original environmentalists.
Well, they're always on the pig farmers. The pig farmers are always getting,
the CAFOs. That's
right.
Exactly right.
Matter of fact, I worked in Iowa, up in Des Moines, and that's a big deal in Iowa with the pig farmers. But so the lady's dog. Where was the dog? Was it on her property or what?
It was. She said she found the dog on a hill, I think, near her property. And the dog is alive, but the dog has vet bills. So she has set up a GoFundMe so that folks can, she's tugging at heartstrings so that folks can pay the vet bill. And it is a sad story. Excuse me. The good thing about newspapers that have comment sections or robust comment sections is that someone in the comments today on the Washington Missourian site pointed out the fact that there's a few holes in the story, and to lay the blame at hunters is pretty quick to judgment there.
Well, see, I was going to say the same thing because of the fact that you do have people, and once again, thank God they are a very, 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 very small subset that just shoot at anything on four legs. You know what I mean? And you said it was even before deer season, correct? This happened before deer season?
Yeah, it happened before deer season.
Right.
And what's interesting about the Missourian story is that the story claims that the shooting happened the day that it opened, but in the comments, someone posted out that no, actually, the firearm season didn't open till that Saturday, and the dog was shot on a Friday. So it's those little details that clearly aren't fact-checked by the reporter.
Well, when I was on the air with Shelley, I am a pet. I wouldn't say I'm a pet lover. I don't have any pets right now. Do you have any pets?
I don't have any pets, no.
Well, see, there was a story, and I know people who've listened to the other show maybe have heard this before, and they'll go, oh, here he goes again. I don't know if you remember this or not, but there was a guy, maybe this happened 5, 6, 7 years ago, some doofus down in South County, South St. Louis County, who got upset with his dog for whatever reason. And I don't know, maybe it did something, it pooped somewhere it shouldn't have, or whatever the deal was. But whatever reason, he got upset with the dog, and he grabbed a hammer out of his toolbox, and he beat the dog to death with a hammer. Okay. Now, once again, I say that person is messed up. There's something wrong with that person.
There's something wrong with that.
Right.
For sure.
Okay. But what happened was, for like weeks afterwards, they picketed the guy's home. All the the pet lovers. Oh, we can't believe he did that. And they picketed his home. And I said, almost every week, you can read a story locally, in the Post-Dispatch, or anywhere. You can go on a website to a major city, and almost on every week, sometimes almost on a daily basis, you'll see some story about some guy, and it's usually some dude, who shakes his baby to death, beats his baby up, kills his baby. Where are they picketing at that guy's house? You know what I'm saying?
Of course.
I mean, to the point where in the hierarchy of life, the humans are on top. Let's be honest we're on top, right? And the animals are beneath us. And I get it that people get emotionally attached to their dogs and things like that, but there comes a point when you have to say, okay, you care more about the fact that this guy beat his dog to death with a hammer than you do about some dude who shook his baby to death, or the baby wouldn't shut up, so he smothered it. It's just like, I don't get that kind of stuff.
Well, you could also draw a pretty clear overlap if you looked at the folks who are animal rights activists and what percentage of them describe themselves as being pro-choice. That's a pretty significant irony. If you wear a meat is murder shirt and you also protest for abortion, that's a pretty clear dichotomy to me. But
that whole thing, that's if you say that, and this is a phrase that I've heard for a long time, and people, especially in the Midwest, sometimes go, huh? They call that abortion the third rail of politics. Now, for those of you who don't know what that means, in the subway system, I believe in New York City, the subways have 3 rails. Not 2, but 3. And 2 of the rails, the outside rails, are used for the wheels to move the train. That's why the train goes down the tracks. The 3rd rail is the power rail. That's where the electricity goes in. Unlike our Metrolink system, which uses a system, I don't know what they call it, like a trestle or something like that. What is that thing that's on top of the Metrolink? Do you know what that officially is called? I'm not a train guy.
I don't know what it is. I know that the metros are powered by burning taxpayer cash. I know that's how they're fueled.
Well, there's that thing that goes up to the top, which is the part of the electric, and the rails on the bottom. Essentially, the thing on the top, which has that thing that's on spring loaded, and as the Metrolink moves down the tracks, it touches the power source on the bottom, and then the rails on the bottom are the other side of the current. And the idea being is, unless you're like Stretch Armstrong or you're Wilt Chamberlain, if you go out there on the rail system, there's no way you can stand and touch the bottom rail and the top power supply. So, but in New York, there's 3 rails, and they talk about the 3rd rail of politics, meaning that if you cross 2 rails, you get zapped. And I think, especially after we saw the most recent election, is the abortion thing is just incredibly a hot button issue, and the Republicans, unless they, I don't know, can do something they're doomed, don't you think?
I think that here in Missouri, it'll be a challenging election. The problem that pro-choice activists face is that, and you can read some of these articles on my website as well, the pro-choice camp is quite divided themselves, because the purists, we'll call them the purists, and the ones that really run, the Planned Parenthoods and the most vocal pro-choice activists want full abortion up until conception. So most of the folks on the Democratic side that actually want something to pass in Missouri do not want, would not push for abortion up until the point of delivery. But for the most ardent pro-choice activists, there's no compromise on this. So they're having quite a debate. And as my friend Scott Fawn, who hosts This Week in Missouri Politics, points out, in the days of a Jay Nixon or a Claire McCaskill, somebody would get these activists together and say, we're not going to go full tilt pro-abortion. We're just going to go pro-choice, and we're going to have some sensible guardrails around it. But in today's Democratic Party, because you lack that type of leadership, you're being led by the pro-choice activists. And in fact, I believe if you have a strident pro-choice ballot initiative on the ballot, it will actually hurt Democrats.
Now, and say that again, one more time on what you just said.
Well, if Democrat activists put essentially a no apologies abortion measure on the ballot, they're in a much worse place than they would if they put something on that says, okay, Missouri will allow first trimester abortions.
Right. So in other words, you're saying if they do go the full thing where you can abort literally, on the day of birth, you could abort, that would be suicide for the Democrats?
I think it would be. It would certainly be less advantageous than if they put something on the ballot that said, "Okay, we're cool with first trimester abortions." In other words, there's no moderating the left-wing Democrat position on abortion, and in fact, they view that as a betrayal in the Democratic Party.
Well, being a guy that's up there in years, I guess what I find is there doesn't seem to be much gray anymore. It seems like everybody is either one side or the other. And I'm, saying right up front, I'm the libertarian guy. And sometimes I get this where people go like, well, is you're for chaos? I go, no, that's an anarchist. An anarchist says no rules, no laws, no nothing, anything goes. A libertarian essentially says, you know what? It's important that the government tells us to drive on the right side of the highway. It's important for the government to tell us that red light means stop. It's things like that. It's important for us to not allow someone to walk down the street and hit you in the head with a baseball bat. Those are the important things. But yet what's happened is government has gone into so many crazy rabbit holes to the point where, can I tell you something that maybe this is something, well, I'll tell you what, we'll talk about this in the next break. Yesterday, I got my mail yesterday. Yesterday in the mail, you know what I got?
What's that? A property tax bill?
No, I got that. I get those all the time. I got my pocket Constitution.
Nice. From whom?
Well, are you familiar with Hillsdale College?
I am, yeah.
Okay.
A good right-wing institution.
Okay, they advertise on radio a lot, and I'd say, great, you advertise on radio. You have my, vote of confidence right there. And they have an ad where they say, hey, you go to this website, and they give a website, and you will send you your free pocket Constitution. I'm going like, what the heck? And I probably, I even forgot about it. I maybe did this like maybe a month and a half ago. I sat and I read the whole thing yesterday. And it's got the Bill of Rights and the whole bit. And you know what? It's fascinating because there's so many things in there that as I refresh my memory of things, I'm going like, wow. And what's also interesting is, especially when you go through the amendments, there are amendments that have been put in and taken out. And like probably the most famous one is Prohibition, where Prohibition went in, I believe, what was it? I have to get it. It's out in the car. 1919, I believe, Prohibition. And if you don't know the whole story behind that.
Sounds about right, yeah.
Where essentially it was illegal to, it was interesting. The actual amendment states that the date the amendment was passed from that date, a year from that date, essentially it went into effect. So in other words, there was a year where I guess everybody just got S-faced, if you know what I'm saying, and
Yeah,
just
exactly.
tilted back quite a bit of brewskis and stuff like that. But anyway, I tell you what, let's take another break because I got to run some commercials here, and we'll talk about that on the backside. This is the bjshow.co. And that website's not up yet, but I own it at least. bjshow.co will be our official website once we get things going. This is the inaugural version of Brad and John in the Morning. It's 7:43.